Hey, I love these movies, but even though a lot of the fun and the violence and the action is exciting to watch, if these movies don't get a solid footing in what's right and what's wrong, if they don't have a solid moral compass, at a time when we really need our storytellers to point that out. George?
You're out there with the garbage. You're nothing.
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This video is brought to you by elbow grease, an hour after thankless hour of sitting in front of a video screen. I remember first seeing The Road Warrior when I was 12 years old. It was my birthday, and me and my two friends got to choose which movie to watch, and that was on cable, and it just sounded cool. Had no idea it was a sequel. A couple years later, learned about the movie Mad Max, and loved that. Ever since then, I've been in love with post-apocalyptic films. And aside from an occasional blip that still had some good points, George Miller's been fantastic. I love the look of his films. I love the action. The motorized, scooter jockey, high-octane themes of his films, I can't get enough. Fury Road had its faults, and there were seeds planted of problems that I was going to have with this film. But even up until they hit that storm, I was immensely satisfied. That was a fun ride. And even though it wasn't a complete story centered around Max Rockatansky, it was still a fun action adventure. So I was elated to learn that it was a success and they're doing a sequel, or prequel, to Fury Road. Now, they're centering it on Furiosa, which is what some would argue what they did with Fury Road, although the protagonist of Fury Road is actually Nux. It's not Max or Furiosa. Nux is the actual character that has a character arc that happens within the film. Obviously, Max is literally a hood ornament, and Furiosa is a main character, but her arc happens before the movie starts, which seems like what they're trying to establish with this film, only as I'll get to, it's skipping over a lot of stuff that needs to be presented for any of this to make sense. This film has a lot of the great look of the other films, and a lot of imaginative ways in which the scooter jockeys, raiders, and war boys are all carrying out their hijinks. However, it's a bit overlong, it's a bit meandering, and like many movies today that have strong female characters, quote unquote, it loves its main character too much, doesn't raise the stakes on them, creates a kind of Mary Sue, and ultimately you have a weaker character and a weaker film because of it. Few things off the bat, her name is Furiosa. As a child, her parents named her that. I thought she's from this peace-loving tribe. And her friend's name is Valkyrie. Why do they have these kind of like warlike aggressive names? I thought she got her name Furiosa, or I imagined that she did, from Immortan Joe. Furiosa sounds more like something that he would have come up with. If the green space is so precious, why is there no security or alarm system? Why doesn't she go and try to warn the others of these intruders into their area? Cutting their fuel lines and then getting grabbed by them? Yeah, that's called, as the kids like to say, F around and find out. And why do no other people aid in the rescue? It can be all women going to rescue her, but why is only one going? And as a small child, she's kidnapped and riding on the back of one of the bikes and chews through the guy's fuel line? Yeah, ridiculous. There's no way she's biting through that fuel tube.
Why don't you tell me what really happened?
The riders who kidnap her are goofy and weak. How quickly this movie wilted. These are not the Mad Max ruthless scooter jockeys that we're used to. These are henchmen straight out of Disney. Sexy is not sexy in Mad Max. The sexy of Mad Max is ugly, is brutal. That's what attracts us to this franchise in particular, and genre in general. It's not sugar-coated, it's not glossy, it's hard-edged, and it's ruthless. There's a Mad Max cameo that, for my money, makes no sense. It was kind of cool in a way to see it, little post-apocalyptic memberberry. But why? What's going on here should be like 10 years before what happens in Fury Road. And after riding all night, Wine Mom looks fabulous. After settling in with Thor, the film moves along nicely. They try to take the Citadel, then take Gastown. Then the souffle collapses when they enter negotiations with Joe. There's a standoff that really doesn't make much sense, and everyone starts introducing themselves, and I'm taken right out of the picture.
Well, I'm the organic mechanic. All things therapeutic.
Oh, you're using made-up names.
So Rictus grabs her from the holding cell. There's no mention of this from Joe. There's no search everywhere. Joe singled her out when he negotiated the bargain with Dementus. Her disappearing is going to send him into a rage, I'd imagine. And then all of a sudden, there's a new war boy that nobody's seen before? Nobody's putting two and two together that she's missing and there's a new war pup? Doesn't make any sense. I like the relationship between Jack and Furiosa, but I don't know why he's been made to look physically non-threatening. He has the posture of a walking safe space. I seriously thought this was a de-aged Stacy Keach, but he looks so awkward. It almost looks like Ricky Gervais. He looks like a 5'6", frumpy, awkward dude, but whatever. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the character Furiosa. I like the actor, she's good, but she just doesn't have the physical presence. In close-ups, she looks fantastic. In wide shots, she looks incredibly awkward and looks like she weighs 45 pounds. Her body language just doesn't carry it. And the quote-unquote badass direction she's given is whack. It's corny. It's what Emily Blunt complained about these new strong female characters, how she groans every time she sees it in a script. Why are female action characters directed this way? It doesn't make any sense. They used to not be. Look at Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Look at Linda Hamilton in Terminator. In action scenes, the actors look tense in the moment they're under duress or they're being attacked. Then they thwart it. They defend themselves. They repel the attack. And then they look relieved when they survive it. Anya, like many today, have this ridiculous badass expression that just makes me think, oh, she's posing. She's posturing. She's not in any real danger. This is patronizing to women. I'm disappointed in Miller. He didn't used to be like this. He should know better. And of course, going right along with modern contemporary action films, the men are ridiculous. They're goofy or stupid or clumsy. This is the problem with making everyone stupid compared to your main character. Your main character then doesn't seem clever. They just seem less stupid than everyone else around them. If you want Furiosa to seem super capable, then the men have to at least be capable. It's a rule of writing. Your character is only as strong as the villain they're fighting against. Look at Luke Skywalker facing against Darth Vader. You look at that and think there's no way he can beat this guy. If your villain is weak, then it's no big deal to overcome them. Okay, at this point, the elder sage character calls her,
That is the darkest of angels. The fifth rider of the apocalypse.
Miller, pick one. And it's corny to call her that. It's corny to have people say that about the character. And in the immortal words of Rusty James,
saying ain't doing. Shit.
You can't tell me she's a badass. You were showing that with her performance on the rig, in the Road War. You were kinda undermining it all with all the sniper stuff, even though it was kinda fun. But how is she such a crack shot? When have we ever seen her do that? Even if she learned it as a kid, she hasn't been practicing. I know this sounds like real killjoy nitpicky stuff, but this is a problem with making these characters they call a Mary Sue. It's not interesting. There are no stakes. And watching someone on God mode is boring. This is why she's considered a Mary Sue, and the criticism is valid. She builds the arm in 5 minutes. I know there's a time elapse and it's supposed to take place over days, maybe weeks, and they're talking about the different wars that have taken place over time, and this is the 40-day wasteland war or whatever. But it looks like she just decides to go down and build a prosthetic arm that's gonna work, and does it. And although she's presumably trained with the war boys, it has not been established that she has learned any such skills. She's a crack shot with no training. She magically dismantles Demented's bike, unloads his weapon, and drains his canteen all while he's sleeping. I would guess that if you're surviving in the wasteland, you're a real light sleeper. Look, I hate to sound like I'm dumping on it because I do love the landscape. The production design is great. There's lots of cool cars and gear, and some really cool set pieces. A lot of the great action stuff that I love and expect from a George Miller movie. But ultimately, it cowered away from showing what I felt it needed to do. You need to show Furiosa as a ruthless warlord for Joe. What it did was skirt around that, showing her surviving in the Citadel, inexplicably blending in, then becoming Jack's protege, and explains why she did learn to do some stuff. But if she ultimately wins Joe's trust, we should see her doing work for him, doing real ruthless dirt. But this movie ultimately fails because they love their character too much and are afraid to show her being cruel, which is what someone who had cruelties done to them would have become. Like the Demented character. I like how at the end, he was throwing that back in her face. He's been down this road. Revenge isn't gonna make you feel better. Revenge isn't justice. At the very end, we're picking up right before the start of Fury Road. This really annoyed me. So we're skipping over years of her doing crime for Joe? For this film to be great, or at least for it to meet its potential in my eyes, Furiosa needed to become the very thing she despises. A cruel crime lord for Immortan Joe. Like Mama in Judge Dredd. Yeah, that bad. She needed to become something we held in contempt. A murderer of the innocent. Just like she was trained to do under Joe's regime. Like the young Spartans in 300, beaten to the point of breaking, then becoming a junkyard dog, committing treachery, rising through the ranks, earning the hallowed and much sought-after title of Imperator, commanding a war rig. Then she can rise like a phoenix and redeem herself by saving all the other brides of Chunky. Instead, she's played like all these other quote-unquote strong female characters as a victim, just like society today is conditioning everyone to think of themselves as. And guess what, kids? Viewing yourself as a victim is not a sign of strength. A victim mentality is not a strong mentality. Now, people that are victims of trauma or of terrible hardship can use that to build on and develop character from. But viewing yourself as a victim is a sign of weakness. Showing vulnerability is a sign of strength. But they never let female characters do it anymore. Think of Sigourney Weaver as Ripley in Aliens. She stated earlier that she's a flight officer. She's not a soldier. You've got the Space Marines. Go kick ass with them. You don't need me. Then at a moment in the film, when she knows she's got to learn to be a soldier, she breaks just a little. You can see it in Weaver's performance. She sighs a little, breaks herself just a little and says, okay, what do I do next? When she asks Hicks to show her how to use the pulse rifle. That vulnerability was a sign of strength. She broke herself just a little to say, okay, I'm not perfect, so I'm going to ask you if you can please show me how to do this. And because of that, we now see her as she's armed with that skill. Showing vulnerability is not done by stomping around and throwing a tantrum, lashing out wildly and pointing fingers. It's very strange, this period we're in of supposed empowerment, yet it's really amorality. Revenge isn't justice, but the Western culture we live in has lost sight of that. I know this sounds weird in a Mad Max review, but we're so inundated with the concept of violence as a solution, and it's wrong.
All I know is I finally get to kill somebody.
In the original entries, Max lost his family, got revenge. But as we saw him in Road Warrior, it didn't make him happy. Pappagallo points this out to him, points out that he's a buzzard, scavenging off the old world. That there's a line, and you're either out there with the trash and the vermin, and those that are exploiting people and stealing and not wanting to be a part of a society, and then the rest of us, who are working to build something better.
Do you think you're the only one that's suffered? We've all been through it in here. But we haven't given up. We're still human beings with dignity. It's you. You're out there with the garbage. You're nothing.
You can see it in the movie. This cuts the character to his core. He's called out on the fact that he's emotionally cut off, that he's not facing up to the tragedy that he experienced. And driving out there in that white line nightmare isn't gonna bring him any happiness. Hey, I love these movies. I love the adventure. I love the dark aspect of them. And it's fascinating to see and imagine what would happen if society did fall. But even though a lot of the fun and the violence and the action is exciting to watch, if these movies don't get a solid footing in what's right and what's wrong, if they don't have a solid moral compass, at a time when we really need our storytellers to point that out. George?
You're out there with the garbage. You're nothing.
Do I recommend this movie? Yeah, kinda. I mean, I love this universe. Cold pizza is still pizza, baby.
Great band, it's a bad band, it's like pizza, baby. It's good no matter what, there's music in the air.
It's still fun, and it's a world I love to get lost in any chance I get. But I'm not connecting with any of it like I did with the earlier entries. There's a lot of great set pieces, there's a lot of fun, but they mishandled the character of Furiosa. She could have gone down like Ripley or Sarah Connor. Instead, they played it safe. Thanks for clicking in.
It's beautiful, man! Beautiful!